Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And now a word from our sponsor. Do you need money? Do you need it fast? Are you not a fan of interest-based loans? Well, check out fundmebff.com. 100% halal interest-free loans. How does that work? Well, if you live in the United States, you can get a loan of $5,000 to $50,000, all interest-free. It's based off a percentage of your income. If your income goes down, your payments go down. If your income goes up, your payments go up. 100% halal. Check it out today. Fundmebff.com.
And now back to the show.
What's good? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So today, after recent events, Fahad and I, we decided to bring on a guest that could, tell us a little bit about practical steps to take, in light of the Christchurch shooting. And we heard of him from Fahim of Mr. Focus 180. Shout out to him. His name is Leon Smith. He's an expert with over 10 years in security, and it's not the mall cop type of security. Assalamu alaikum, Leon. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so could you tell us a little bit about your background for our listeners? Because even I'm not fully familiar.
Okay, so I was a security professional for about 10 years. I recently left that profession a little while ago, and I'm currently a facilities manager for a company in my local area. But during that 10 years, I really came to learn through a lot of great teachers, both coworkers and managers, consultants, and others, a lot about security, not just the nuts and bolts of it, but really the overall philosophy of what drives security and need for it, and how to think about it and how to, go about putting together a comprehensive security program for yourself, for your life, for masajid, for businesses, anything like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So far, like what you've mentioned is that, so you have the experience of just the overall process of developing that security mindset. It's not just like, oh, we hire a couple of security guards, they got it. The whole community, all of us need to have that mindset.
Exactly. The thing I came to learn in the 10 years that I worked in the security industry was that every person is a participant in security. And if you take the approach, as you mentioned, that, security are mall cops, they're TSA agents. You're undercutting what security actually is. And of course, those folks are out there. There are, jokers born every day, but and some people do use and belittle security in a way to make a false facade of security. We have a couple of mall cops, so everything's great. But that's not security. Security is really understanding what risks you face, assessing those, and then developing a security program that fits your place, your resources, your willingness and motivation of everybody who involved in that program, and putting it into action.
So I like how you mentioned that it's about risk management and how everyone in the local vicinity is involved in understanding that mindset and internalizing it, and then taking action to assess risks, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you mean by risks?
So risk is something that we all face every day, be it whether it is, driving, we have a risk of crashing our automobile, be it of running up and down stairs, we have a risk of a slip or a trip or a fall, or being something like we saw in the most recent unfortunate instances in New Zealand with an active shooter situation. So there's all range of risk. And by risk, you mean a threat to life or property. So, you have risks to property. You have natural risks to property. You got fire, you have, lightning, you have flooding. And then you have, of course, human risks, robbery, vandalism, graffiti, active shooter situations. So risk is really is looking at and assessing any potential threat to life and property. So whether you're driving in your car, like I said, you take a calculated risk of whether you're going to get into an accident or not. And then you, in your mind, you develop a philosophy of okay, well, how am I going to mitigate or lessen that risk? I'll drive the speed limit. I'll drive with proper equipment in my vehicle. And those things are the measures that you institute to be part of your philosophy to address the risk. So, from even the small basic things all the way up to the major crises and emergencies that face the ummah, that face us individually, that face small groups of us, be it in a madrasa or be it in a masjid, be it in a social gathering outdoors. All of these things have risk that we can assess and then formulate a program or a philosophy to address, and then institute all the pieces that fit with that program. So it's very comprehensive, and it's a way of thinking. It involves buy-in by everybody, right, not just the three people who you said you're in charge of this.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, go ahead, Fahd.
I was going to say that, like, the difference between the security of an airport versus the security of a masjid versus the security of like a grocery store, what would be the different priorities of like things that you have to protect?
Absolutely. So when any particular place, and a good example is a gold shop, is a perfect example. Some of the examples you gave are great as well. Grocery store or anything like that. You have to look at what your individual risk is. And part of that is looking around you and saying, okay, well, what have other similar institutions such as mine faced? So if I'm opening that gold shop, I know that other gold shops have been robbed. I have some general idea about what the level of crime is in the area of which my shop is located. You then basically start to put together a profile. You start to build and that level of knowledge and basis of all the variables involved. What level of risk do you have to your patrons? If you have patrons, there's a lot of different elements. And like you said, security at an airport is going to be completely different than security at a masjid. There's going to be broad similarities, and there's going to be elements that you want to, that you can share between the two, such as preservation of life. I mean, that's one of the main things that is going to be present in pretty much any security scenario. Whose life is always going to vary, whether it is just a handful of people or a large number of people, whether it is patrons, people who are customers of a place, or it's people who are active, such as employees in that place. You're going to have those different elements. And so you need to look at, like with a masjid, you need to look at it as you would first as any other structure or business or location and the risks that it would face. Then you would look at what additional level of threats or risks does a masjid in particular face that perhaps other areas don't. And you start to build, again, that individual profile. So a masjid in, let's say, Bethnal Green in London, where my ustad and the course I'm taking is located, to a masjid in rural Vermont, where I am located, is going to have a very different assessment of risk because of the locale we are in, but they're also going to have the similarities because of the nature of the business we're in. So it's a very complex, but also very simplistic in kind of both ways. I mean, it's location. It's what's the nature of what you're doing. Are you a 24/7 masjid? Are you a Jummah masjid? Are you, there's a lot of differences.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned that there's differences between the masjid. So let's touch on, this shooting that happened, the Christchurch in New Zealand. I don't recommend people to watch the video, but I'm going to touch on it just to mention some of the security risks that could have been mitigated. Because Leon watched the video and he had he actually posted about it. He had a whole thing on Facebook. I think we'll link it in the description. But he was talking about how he broke down the number of seconds, the different exits of the mosque, and the blind spots. So in that given situation, that environment, what is the, like, if you were the head of security, how would you go about mitigating the risk? What would you do, right? So you saw him, we came in, he started shooting in, like he was like 10 feet out. Right?
So I think it's important at this point to realize that if you're starting to think about your masjid security when an active shooter comes in, you're too late.
That's too late. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to see it before it happens.
I think, right, exactly. I think the first step that every brother and sister that steps in their masjid tomorrow or the next day needs to think about is, what is the risk we face here in this masjid? Not just those general normal risks, the bathroom can flood and that, but what has been going on in our locality? Have there been pigs' heads left on our doorstep? Are we receiving hate mail? Do we get hate phone calls? If you don't know these things, perhaps you should ask some of the management of the masjid, what level of risk do we face here? Because these types of indicators of things, vandalism, hate mail, other stuff, they help you develop a risk level. So you may live in an area where you have a masjid that you feel that is very safe, but you may live in another area where there's a higher level for acts of violence to occur. Now, in specific to Christchurch, without knowing the exact history all the way back to the beginning of have they been getting hate mail, have they been getting other things, the overall assumption, more than likely on the part of the community, was that it's New Zealand, it's a safe place. And that was in a way, a mistake, because you kind of have this laissez-faire attitude of, everything is great in where I am, be you in Canada, the US, or in another Western safe environment.
First world, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. So you feel we don't have that problems. That's like what happens at the masjid in Egypt when they have an attack and 200 people die, or Pakistan or something. So the first step is recognizing that there are risks inherent with any location, and there are special risks that we face as Muslims and as masjid and as madrasa, or even Muslim businesses. If you could be a kebab seller, I mean, not to profile, and but I'm just saying, you could be just a food vendor or something, all of these. So you have to think that first, and then you have to look at what specific risks you face. In the case of Christchurch, it's possible that they've never had a problem before. It's also possible they have had instances of hate before. But anybody would today, in this day and age, should be able to hop on the computer and realize that there is a lot of Islamophobia, and there's a lot of hate, and there's a lot of people out there who are saying they would do this or they would do that. And we can't really assume that, well, they live in the next town. They may live in your town. And we can't really assume that they are overtly hostile in public. Everyone always says, oh, he was a nice guy. We didn't know him. So that nice guy may not be. So
yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
so
no one's going to announce it like out loud.
In Christchurch, the guy he came from Australia.
Yep.
To New Zealand.
Yep.
Because it was a safe place.
Right.
So the guy, you're worrying about people from all over the world now at this point.
Exactly. So, and the other thing is, you cannot, this is one of the things with profiling that why it doesn't work when it's done against Muslims, us, and why it doesn't work when we do it against others. Because you can't look and say, oh, he's a brown brother, he's good. You can't look and say, oh, he's a white guy, oh, he's just a businessman, or he's not going to do anything. Or you can't, threats can come in all different forms, in all different colors. So, we don't want to get so blindsided by the fact that there's this, right wing, or whatever you want to call it, left wing or white nationalist type of violence. Yeah. Yeah. And just focus on that. The next may be some, radical Hindu terrorist.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, but assessing the general overall risk, like in Christchurch, without knowing their particular history. But even then, I don't care if it's the safest place on the world, you always need to be thinking, well, what would I do if? And that, gets to the general level of security thinking. Like I go into a restaurant. I don't know if you guys do the same thing, but this is how someone with a security mind thinks. You go in the restaurant door, I look around the room and I say, oh, there's a door there. Or, oh, there's that group's loud over there, so I'm not going to sit over there because they look rowdy. You're making a risk assessment right then and there. And you're instituting security measures right then and there where you sit, whether you realize it or not. And that's the type of thing that should have been going on in Christchurch when they realized, before the shots even fired, they should have thought, what would happen if are we too open? Are we too open to acts of graffiti, violence, other things that are not necessarily to the level of an active shooter, but anything? Regardless of how safe of an area you are, regardless of even if your risk assessment is putting it as a low priority, it is still a risk. So, I mentioned to you earlier when we had a brief introduction before the video that there was an alley nearby that the shooter picked. He picked this alley to park his car and to base his little attack out of. That's something that beforehand should have been recognized by people in the community as a potential risk. It was a little blind, dark alley right next to the compound area. Whether it was a risk, go ahead.
Oh no, go continue.
Yeah, whether it was a risk posed by a drug dealer using it to sell drugs, kids to hide down the alley to smoke or drink or do something, whether it was just a dark and dangerous place that sisters might not have wanted to walk down after Isha. This is something they should have thought about. And then they should have, if they had developed a security philosophy in advance, they could have said, we want to do something about that. We want to mitigate that risk. So let's, maybe ask the local PD does that alleyway have to be open? Is it a public right of way? Maybe we can close it. Maybe, there's all these things that could have proceeded before you started hearing bullets fly. That these are things that need to be in everyone's mind like yesterday. One of the things I mentioned in one of my posts that I was shared with you guys was this color conditioning system.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, the white, the yellow, the orange.
Right. And there's this guy, Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Cooper. He's a famous handgun guy. But he gave this great system, and to this day, almost every law enforcement agency out there uses it as part of their training. And they have this basic, simple color system of condition white, which unfortunately is where most everybody is. They're unaware, they're unalert. They have this laissez-faire attitude of just, I go about my life. Then there's condition yellow, where most people should be, where they're alert, aware, they have situational awareness. They can foresee that, maybe this could be a problem. And then it escalates up from there. But what happens is if you don't have this condition yellow and you don't know how to think about your general security individually and collectively, then the only two colors that are going to matter to you are color white and color black, because you're going to be in color white, unaware and unalert, and then something bad's going to happen and you're going to panic, and that's going to put you in color black. You're going to physically and mentally break down.
So what are the 5 different colors?
Yeah. So the colors are white, which is you are unaware, unalert. You are really just going about your day. You're not paying any attention to whatsoever to who is around you or what is around you. You're the person literally with the cell phone who's texting while walking and you fall in the manhole. Okay? That's in condition white. Condition yellow is, I'm doing things. I might be working. I might be packing my groceries at the grocery store. I'm driving. You're doing something, but you're alert. You're paying attention to the fact that there's a guy over there who's been standing there for 10 minutes and he gives me the creeps. Okay. Or there's a odd, funny smell coming from this room, or you're alert to those things. You're not just completely oblivious. I'll give just a perfect example. I had a security officer who worked for me who failed to recognize that a main lobby of a building had flooded. He walked through the building 4 times, okay, through water about this deep, and never once dawned on him that there was flooding because he was in condition white. He was not paying attention. Now, needless to say, he didn't work for me after that. But the thing is, you need to be in condition yellow. You need to be alert to those smells, to the sounds, to the sights. You see the guy with the axe and the blood dripping off it, okay? That's, whoa, I see it. I know there is a potential risk. Then you take it to condition orange, okay, which is the third color. So white, yellow, and orange. Orange is there is a probable risk. So you've taken all that stimulus, all that input, and you've determined using your brain that there's a potential risk. And the key thing here is potential. That guy with the axe and the blood dripping, he may have just been butchering chickens. No risk to you. Okay? But you've assessed it as a potential risk. So maybe you decide to cross the street, or maybe you decide to do something. But that's orange. That's where you've now identified something as potential risk. Yellow, you haven't identified a risk. You're just situationally aware. Now, if that risk that you've now identified in orange turns into something where it is not a potential risk, but a real risk, to use the guy with axe example, the guy with axe starts coming at you. You now need to elevate to condition red, which means you're ready for action. Ready for action to implement what you are going to do. You need to make a decision. Am I going to engage this individual? Is that part of my security philosophy? Am I prepared to engage that individual? If it's not part of your security philosophy, have you made that decision in advance that in those type situations that you're going to put distance between you and that person? That you are going to flee danger to safety. Not that you're just going to flee because you may run into more danger. You're going to flee to safety. You've made that conscious decision. And that is, and that's the action you're going to take. If you don't get to that, if you don't properly develop the proper security philosophy, you just go from white to black. People don't understand. We see it in the movies. A good example. Somebody's running to try to get in their house. They're getting away from the bad guy. The guy's chasing them with the knife. They struggle to get the keys out of the pocket. They panic. They panic. They struggle to get the keys in the door. This happens because you are now overloaded. You're in panic. You have mental and physical breakdown. Your fine motor skills, gone. Your gross motor skills are still there, but the running, the moving isn't as good as you think it would be. Okay? The thinking is almost shot. Okay? Some people will get so overwhelmed with the panic that their vision will actually constrict down to a very small amount. They will block out all of the peripheral vision. They get literally tunnel vision. So that's where you're going to go if you haven't developed that in your mind. So, back to, the New Zealand situation, that's what we saw, is we saw a community that hasn't thought through risk, and it hasn't thought through what its security philosophy is. How is it going to mitigate those risks? And it hasn't implemented any of the security measures that fit in its philosophy that could help mitigate that risk. So it immediately went to condition black. We saw so many brothers and sisters, may Allah grant them Jannatul Firdaus. They huddled in the corners, or they just failed to move.
Yeah, I wanted to add on. I just wanted to touch on that. When you never rise. There's like a phrase, right? Oh, you rise to the occasion. That's not true. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of training. And in that situation, and this is like unfortunate. I don't want to say unfortunate, but this is like a product of today's times where we assume peace as the norm, right? Whereas back in the day, brutality was the norm. Back in the day, in the time of Sahaba, most men they were combat ready or had some form of training.
Or they had swords with them.
Correct.
They had swords with them.
Around.
Yeah. So they had some form of training.
Part of the Jamaat would pray while the other part of the Jamaat would watch. I mean, we all know that in the battlefields and how that worked out.
Yeah, not even battlefields. Well, you see it even in Mecca today. You have security guards surrounding the imam.
Absolutely.
During the prayer congregation. So
and that was right, and that was one of the things that came up to mind when I, particularly with this, with two masjid literally about 10 minutes apart. You had the Linwood, and then you had the An-Nur. This is where you can get some cooperation if you have brothers in your community going, well, I don't want to watch over the masjid, I want to pray. And you can stagger your Jamaat times such that brothers from this Jamaat can watch this Jamaat and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a good point.
These are other, but again, you don't get to that level of thinking
without the training involved.
Without first starting assessing risk and then getting to that.
But hold on, I want to touch on something here. So you said, okay, so like this guy came in, let's say I have the security mindset. This guy comes in, but from the perspective of those people, they have no gun. They have no way of fighting back. So should they not, are they not better off playing dead? Because they're going to die anyways. I'm being devil's advocate. I don't agree with this. But this is the point I'm bringing up.
No, but you can't really judge them, Amar, because they had no idea what to really do.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying in this situation, you have no training. You could like rush him. You're probably gonna die. You could hide. You're probably gonna die. You're gonna die either way. So why not just like what they did?
Right.
Isn't that what they? I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is from a devil's advocate perspective. If you have no gun, no training, they're playing dead. Because they're going to die anyways. Or if they rush them, they'll die anyways. Yeah. So,
well, the only control you have in such an instance is over yourself. Right. So you yourself also need to adopt, in addition to the collective of the group and that, but you yourself need to adopt what your individual security program and philosophy is. In such an instance, like we see in some places where we, due to laws or other other things at play, we don't have armed brothers or sisters. Okay, we need to, as individuals in this situation, make that split-second decision when that guy comes in, and like Brother Fahad was saying, it's kind of hard to individually say, well, what this brother did or what that sister did,
because they were in the black zone, right?
Exactly. They were in the black zone. But part of this, getting to the point of developing that security program and to learn and train and think about all of these things is to get to, in your mind, would I go at this guy? Would I be like this brother Abdul Aziz at the Linwood Masjid? Would I go? Yeah. Would I go at this guy? Would I be like the other brother who unfortunately passed away?
I saw that. He tried to jump him
as well.
Right. Exactly.
And to be honest, if a few other brothers were with him, like let's say they went through the security training, right? Let's say they had that mindset. Maybe 3 other brothers who were in orange state of mind, they could have jumped him with him, and maybe they could have stopped him.
Right.
Given training.
When you're dealing with a lone shooter in this instance, particularly a lone shooter who when he came into the masjid, onto the property, into the compound, he had a shotgun and he was shooting with the shotgun. He dropped the shotgun and then proceeded in using an AR, a carbine military style rifle.
It's a semi-automatic. For those of you who don't know what that is, a shotgun, basically it's kind of a slow gun, but it sprays bullets everywhere. And then an AR-15 is it's a gun that shoots a lot of bullets really, really quickly.
Yeah. Essentially, a semi-automatic it will automatically recycle itself. So every time you pull the trigger, it will fire. The military uses weapons that a lot of times are automatic, meaning they just hold the trigger and it continues to fire. So there is a bit of a difference. But for a proficient individual who's familiar with their firearm, and I'm not so certain this guy is an expert, but he's definitely not a novice. You are able to basically fire that weapon many times. Depending upon the magazines he had, most standard magazines for an AR are 30 rounds. So, and when he drops that magazine, he pushes the button and he loads another magazine in. Again, depending upon how proficient someone is, he seems to be reasonably proficient, but not an expert. He does not have the fastest magazine changes I've ever seen by any shot. But during those times, he's vulnerable. And a single shooter period is vulnerable, especially in short distances. You can cover 10 meters or less in a very short order. And as we saw with the Linwood situation, most shooters, when confronted, be it you throw a cup at them, be it you flick lights on and off, be it you do anything to distract them, it's going to mess up their flow. So even unarmed in a case like New Zealand,
because they need a lot of concentration, right? In order
right,
to aim
exactly,
to kill you,
not,
or if you're even if you're a moving object,
right?
Run around.
But also you have to understand he's doing his own risk assessment as he proceeds. Okay, especially the fact that most of these guys like this are very cowardly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. They're attacking unarmed civilians.
Why would an armed guy go and attack unarmed people if he was so brave? If he was so brave, he could have volunteered, go fight for the Peshmerga or something, and go fight ISIS or something. There's
exactly.
How many,
if he was actually brave, he would do that.
Exactly. So if you hate, Islam and the Islamic State, then, go join the hundreds of other Western, nut jobs currently over in Syria. But this is a guy who, he's going after a soft target on purpose. So, we know he went to Turkey. We know he didn't attack anybody in Turkey. Why? Because he's alone. He knows he's done. The moment he attempts to attack something, So
the point he was trying to attack. This is kind of going a little bit off topic, but the point he was trying to attack people was to. He didn't mind people living in their own countries, but he minded when Muslims lived in "quote unquote" white people country.
Yeah, again, not to go off track, but his manifesto is all over the place.
Yeah.
This guy has elements of radical leftism, radical rightism. He has elements that aren't even on the scale. The guy says that China, the guy that says that China is one of his model countries. I don't know of any right-wing conservative who would say that. But, so he's all over the place. And I think some of that could be, not to get off the tangent, but some of that could be purposeful obfuscation. He's purposely trying to throw up a smoke screen. He's purposefully trying to cloud the picture about it. But particularly with the shooting, when a guy comes in like that, a single shooter, he's also assessing risk. You notice what happened when two rural policemen in New Christchurch stopped him.
Yeah, with just one of them, only one of them had a pistol, right?
Exactly. I mean, it was so quick. It's like, whoa, boom, they hauled him out of the car and they bundled him up. Okay. So this wasn't one of those guys who was like, I'm not scared of death, shoot me. This was a guy who, when he was encountered by a guy with an office machine, and then even when the brother Abdulaziz picked up one of the guy's guns that he had dropped, and he threw it at him. Right, he threw it at. This is a guy who got out of there.
Yeah.
So understanding that even if you are unarmed, when encountering an armed individual,
they get scared too.
They get scared too, and they get confused too. He's going into a building that he may have never been to before. He may have seen it from the outside, but maybe he's never even been inside. So he doesn't know what's what door and what's where. So things that are anything designed to confuse him or to distract him or will buy time for others to get away, or buy time for others to get active to engage him. It will either stop him, neutralize him, or cause him to flee in some way, shape, or form. Now, of course, as we saw, you rush a gunman, you can be shot. But I would remind you of there's this great video. And if I can, I'll get the link and I'll send it to you guys. Of a Somali brother in South Africa, okay, who was shot 3 times, okay, and still fought off the guy.
Subhanallah.
Right, okay, because none of the vitals were hit. So you can still, even if you're shot in most areas of the thoracic or abdominal cavity, provided not a major artery is hit, you often have enough of that, energy, that adrenaline left to at least make the 3-4 more steps to the guy and to grab his gun and to do whatever you can to disrupt, and maybe another brother sees it and jumps on. So, but again, adopt that mentality in the beginning before you are faced with a situation like that. Start thinking about it today and say, if I see gunshots and in my masjid, what would I do? And again, the situation may change. What you may do or what you think you may do may not be what you end up doing. You may end up going straight to condition black. Okay. Some people don't have the emotional wherewithal to act very effectively, no matter how much they desire to do so. But at least if you think you can, you have a chance that you will.
Exactly.
And if 10 of us think that we can, at least some of us will actively do something. And like I said, chairs, anything you can do will slow that guy down or stop him, neutralize him. It will mess him up. And what you saw here with such a high body count on Nur contrasted to what you saw at Linwood with such a lower body count is really because of the difference in that he was engaged very quickly because a brother recognized the situation and there was an engagement that took place. So it's about, again, minimizing risk, mitigating risk. Okay, you can be Jack Bauer, James Bond, Jason Bourne. If you notice, all their initials are JB. I love that. But you can be any of these three guys, okay? And you can be walking around a corner and somebody walks up behind you and shoots you. Okay, you can have all the training in the world and you can still get the drop on you. You can go down, okay? But if there's enough of us, as there is always in a Jamaat, there should be anyway, we should, with enough of us adopting a mentality of we're not going to sit here like sheep, or we're not going to go to condition black. We're not going to prepare, so we're just going to go right to condition black. Some of us are going to think about what we would do, how we would do it. Starting that thinking process, not that you become fixated on it.
Or become
just
paranoid. Or let it
right.
consume you.
That's exact word I was about to say. Don't become paranoid. We ride in cars, even though we know cars can get in accidents. We fly in planes, even though we know planes can crash. Okay. But at the same time, we prepare. Okay. We make dua. We ask Allah to protect us when we drive our cars, right? But then we also drive our car safe. So there's multiple elements. So you make dua for your community to be safe. You do all those things. You don't want that stuff to happen. But then you also take the steps necessary in that security philosophy of thinking about it. And I've seen this for so long, and I'm glad I had a chance to talk to you brothers about this and share some of this knowledge, particularly because I've seen this in the masjid. We have masjids that aren't prepared for a 7-year-old to slip and fall in the wudu area. We don't have first aid kits. We don't know where the first aid kit is. We don't know where to start so really we need to start thinking and involving everybody in the community, not just the 4 or 5 brothers that are interested in it, but really the sisters. What fears do they have? Are they not bringing our children to the masjid because they are fearful? And, are people not coming to the masjid because they're fearful? Or are they changing their habits in a negative or a bad way? So all of these things, we need to have that. Each community should really have a workshop, a sit down, and involve people and say, hey, let's be a part of this. And again, in some communities are doing it pretty well already, but most communities I've seen are not doing it very well. There's one community, Masjid Al-Hidayah in Latham, New York, who seems to have a pretty good understanding of emergencies and things. And they've worked pretty well with their local law enforcement. They have a good team to work with there. But this isn't a solution that you can just, we'll go out and buy this, put up cameras, solved. We'll go out, we'll call the local police, they'll do a drive-by every couple hours, solved. This is something that you need to start with the basic understanding of philosophy of assessing that risk. And then what is our philosophy here? And again, what can you legally do where you are? What can you financially do? If you're a masjid that is able to afford armed security, there's not very many, but there are some. Are you a masjid that's not able to even afford one camera? You need to operate within your resources and finances, and you need to, develop a philosophy and program that works for you in your location. There are, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, for all those listening right now, primarily those listening are men. And as men, you're supposed to be a qawwam for not only your family, but also for your community and for your
absolutely
for the Muslim community at large. So, as a result, you guys should be taking this conversation very seriously and be implementing, or be at least thinking about bringing
how to implement this in your life, like to add on to Fahad's point.
Yeah, as
this is our job.
Yeah, and bring all this stuff to your to your Muslim community, because a lot of you guys go for Jummah, right? So all of you guys are going to be affected by these kind of concerns as well. So be proactive and actually do something with the information that we're talking about.
And again, we involve everyone, because sisters can have some unique insights, and they have some unique fears, and it's our job, as you said, it's our job to be the guardians of our community and of our homes and of our sisters. So we need to know also if they feel uncomfortable, if they see something that's going on that we need to be aware of. They help us to be situationally aware also. Sometimes we get a little too carried away with focusing on one thing, we miss something else.
Right.
So sharing all that information, the more communication you have, the better.
Yeah, I just wanted to basically add on to Fahad's point and ask you. So right now you said we need to bring in that information, get everyone involved. So right now I just listened to what you told me, and I want to take practical steps into cultivating the mindset, the security mindset. How would I go about that? And second is I totally understand. You want to be calm and ready. Kind of like a predator, right? When a tiger is hunting, he's very calm. So we want to cultivate that security mindset. So
that combat. Some people.
Combat ready, exactly.
Yeah, some people call it the combat mentality.
Combat mentality. Yeah. Yeah. So let's say I train. Maybe I started training Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu. But what are practical steps I can take to cultivate this mindset?
Well, one thing practical that you can do. Hold on one moment. Oh, sorry. Well, yeah. One thing that you can do right off the bat is recognize that you don't know much. Okay, admit that you don't know much, because the first thing a lot of people do is they go, "Oh, I know that, I got it." Okay, so or I can handle myself. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know any I don't know much. Where do I start?
So you don't know anything. The first thing I would recommend right off the beginning would be, if you're in a masjid situation, is I would start looking and brainstorming what resources you have in your community. Do you have any brothers that are law enforcement officers? Do you have any brothers with any security training or anything like that? Do you have anything locally that you can use as a resource? For instance, most communities of decent size have someone who has medical skills. Okay, so you can use that as a resource. Same with security skills. There are brothers out there who work in law enforcement. There are brothers out there who work in the security industry. Even if they work at an entry level, they may have access to some materials. if you don't have that, there are a lot of great resources out there. There are many YouTube channels. One of the best ones out there is Active Self-Protection, where they will go through how-tos of a lot of different situations. They'll show you real life scenarios. There are a lot of things. Just Googling, I mentioned one of my posts, we spend hours on social media doing X, Y, and Z. It doesn't take that long to hop over and watch some of the training and learning resources. Many other resources, be it RCMP, FBI, some of these, they have publications and resources on their websites, active shooter resources, all sorts of other things. This is where you get you've probably heard of the slogan, run, hide, or fight. Right. This is because that was put out by the FBI as a training program. So this is where you start. And at this point, I think a lot of brothers and sisters are so far behind on understanding of the security mentality that any information would help, because it will pique their interest in discovering a little bit more. Right. So I would start with, a lot of, being that I come from a different background, I grew up in a slightly different cultural background with a lot more understanding and knowledge of firearms and other things.
You have kind of like the base already.
Right. Have some base there. If you don't have that, you need to make those little steps forward and approach someone in your community. There was a great New York Times piece that Hassan Shibli, the brother with the AK there.
Oh yeah.
And,
I like that.
Right, exactly. And so I guarantee you there's a brother like that in your community probably somewhere, So so you find, Maulana John Wick, okay? Or you find a brother like Farouk, Focus 180.
Yeah, Focus 180, exactly.
And you find a brother like this and say, hey, I'm in poor shape, okay? I can barely take on my 4-year-old. Brother, get me in better shape. Maybe I lose a little bit of extra weight, so I'm in better shape, so that in a situation like something in Christchurch, maybe I can get away a little faster. Maybe I can take the guy on. Each of these little steps, it really is about starting it and then looking locally for resources. There are books out there. There are some social media things, like I mentioned, with, Active Self-Protection, who does short little videos on real life scenarios. But there are a lot of, where is your motivation and willingness to learn?
Right.
And that's where you need to start. I mean, we have motivation and learning, willingness to learn the new Lady Gaga song or whatever. But but you got to have some willing and learning to step outside of your comfort zone. You cannot just rely on law enforcement.
Precisely.
You can't. You can't just say, "Well, that's their job."
Mm-hmm. You are responsible for protecting yourself, and you, as a man, are responsible for protecting your family as well.
Yeah. And as I've said multiple times over the past few days to many different people, when seconds count, and remember, it was 29 seconds from the time he got out of his car to the bullet started flying. The police are minutes away. It was 20 minutes before the police actually got to An-Nur Masjid. Okay, so in that time period, 20 minutes, if you have a femoral artery that has been severed, you will die. A brachial artery, you will die. Okay? All of these things you need to think about, okay, where do we start as a community? Let's assess our risk. Let's get to a philosophy. What kind of a philosophy are we going to adopt? And what am I going to do as an individual? Go ahead.
So I was going to say, so if you were on the board of that Al-Nur Masjid, what would you have done differently prior to the shooting?
What would you do now?
No, what would you do?
Both.
Yeah, what would you do?
Both. Okay, so prior to, what I would have done is I would have done a risk assessment of the masjid, top to bottom. I would have brought in my local. What kind of things
would you be looking for?
Okay, I would be looking for access. How could someone get in? How do people come into our property, and how do they leave? How many entrances do we have? Do we have 8 entrances? Do we need 8 entrances? One of the key things about any about any security is always about access, giving people access when they need access and when they don't need access. They had people parking inside the compound area. There was on-site parking. Was that necessary? Was there not enough off-site parking? You need to look at that. You should minimize the number of entrances and exits you have. Okay. I would also look at instituting volunteers as far as watching the parking lot, helping people in. These volunteers are not just keeping an eye out for anything that's going on. They're helping the older brother who walks with a cane. They're helping the sister who has 3 children, get her bag out of the car. They're doing other things while staying alert. I would be looking at getting, those volunteers out there, just looking. Okay, the risk assessment of the building itself, I would look at egress and, how do people get out of the building? And this comes down to, a lot of it's connected to fire safety as well. As you may know, a lot of times a fire marshal will come into a building, they say you have to have 2 exits, you have to have all of these things. So this comes down to egress. So if an incident occurs at this door, how do people leave? If an incident occurs here, how do people leave? And if you find yourself in a situation where, if something happens in this hallway, the sisters are stuck in there, they can't get out, then you need to start thinking about, okay, well, maybe we can put a door here. A lot of our architecture of our masjids is unfortunate in that a lot of times buildings were purchased or repurposed based on funds and availability and location, not necessarily with security in mind. But you need to look at all aspects of that. Where do people park? How they come and go?
Where should they park?
That depends on the site. If you are going to allow cars to park adjacent to your building, you probably should have someone outside watching, in my opinion. In today's day and age, when it comes to the masjids, I would not suggest allowing cars that are basically coming off the street with who knows what, either coming in adjacent or even parking in a parking garage underneath or anything like that, because it is a matter of time before. This gentleman himself said, I could have used a bomb.
Yeah, exactly. He said it could have done anything.
I could have used a car.
Yeah.
So I would have recommended against that. Looking at the layout of the property, again, I mentioned that alleyway, other things. Some of the advice, that I've seen out there, and I want to bring up some of this ICNA advice that was brought up. So ICNA puts out these 10 tips, about, what to do after an active thing. And I was just pulling my hair out. My eyes were coming out of my head.
You were so triggered.
Why?
I saw the post. It was good.
I was so because it was so passive that some of the points they put, yeah, I'll pull it up. Yeah.
No, Fahad's pulling it up. You don't.
Fahad's pulling it up. Yeah. So some of the points they put up, clearing around things, putting up cameras, they're okay. They're good points. And that's
hand out
things,
brochures.
But open mosque days and stuff. And I was like, are you serious? So I really laid on the sarcasm and I put a post out and I said, okay, I'll have an open mosque day. Active shooter, walk on in, just grab a brochure on the way out.
So I have the 10 tips here. If you want to just bash them, you can go into it. So the first tip is security cameras. Install security cameras to monitor vandalism and war potential arsonists.
Okay, so security cameras will do you zero good if you don't have someone live monitoring them. Okay, all they are doing, if you have a security camera, is you are recording something which somebody may watch later. Okay, and if you're like most masjid, and I'm familiar with one particular masjid individual with a camera system that I knew quite intimately, that no one but a certain group had access to the cameras. They had no camera policy about how they watched things or recorded things. They didn't know how to use the tech they had. So it doesn't really do you any good if you're not live monitoring it from an active protection point of view.
But they would probably protect against vandalism, right?
They might protect if
the person's uncovered.
If you're dealing with a person who is conscious about wanting to get caught. But unfortunately, a lot of these kids, it's mask, or it's baseball cap, and you don't know who they are. All the police are going to come, they're going to get a video and they're going to say, okay, that looks like 50 kids that I saw today. Okay. So a lot of times it's not really going to do you very much good.
So are security cameras good for anything then?
Yes, they are good for post review of an incident or something, sometimes to verify or provide secondary information to corroborate something. So I would recommend security cameras. Most masjids are not going to be able to use them in a primary role, but as a secondary thing. So if a brother says, for instance, well, brother so-and-so hit my car in the parking lot, it's beneficial.
Yeah.
Or
like shoe theft.
Yeah, exactly. Or if a sister states that, a brother hit her, okay, and you go on the tape and discover that he didn't, okay, they're useful for things like that. They're useful for secondary corroboration of an incident or an event. They're useful for after. And the other thing is too, if you're going to get a camera system, you need to understand that, is the camera system going to work when the power's out? Is the camera system going to work in low light? What level megapixels do you have for a camera? We've all seen the grainy bank cameras that don't show anything. So if you're going to invest in a camera system, it's better to invest in a good camera system rather than any camera system. Some people think that fake cameras are okay. They'll buy you a bit from a distance, but anybody who is really serious about, doing something, can pick out whether a camera's real or not. Usually pretty easy. It's one of those things too, where I use the old adage. I was very thankful to have a wonderful father growing up who taught me all sorts of useful things, such as a lock only keeps an honest man honest. So what I mean by that is a camera keeps an honest person honest. A bad guy generally is going to do something whether there's a camera or not. If there's a lock on your door, okay, a lot of times somebody who's doing a breaking and entering, or they're doing a robbery, they won't even try the lock. They won't even try to see if the door is open. It could be an open door and they'll just kick it in because they're already committed to what they're going to do. Right. So, you see this a lot, in instances where, whether it's graffiti or it's arson or whatever, this is somebody who's committed to doing what they're already going to do anyway. So a camera might help you provide some secondary corroboration, but it's usually, unless you're live monitoring it and you have someone who can respond to the incident as they see it, it's generally not going to help at all in an active shooter scenario. And the other part of it too is, in a very large, huge facility, if you had a facility like the facility I was overseeing at 220,000 square feet, okay, cameras are great when law enforcement arrives because they can actually use the cameras to see around the building and see if someone was still moving or that, but on somewhere on the property. But in a small place like that, they're going to sweep and clear it pretty quick. So it's not even really going to be useful to them when they show up. But go ahead to the second.
The second one was a clear surrounding. Install bright lights to keep greenery to low levels. Yeah.
So that is helpful. However, if you eliminate everything, you have now provided your congregation zero cover and concealment. So meaning that everything that goes on the property can be visually seen from the street. Everything. Which is bad. Exactly. So you do occasionally want to have some privacy screening, and that privacy screening may be greenery. You also need to understand lights and other things. These have practical considerations as far as how much electric you're gonna use, how much it's gonna cost to install those things. So generally, just some basic motion activated lights and some clearing around the general area of the building, enough so that if law enforcement or that come to they can give a quick view of the property, enough so you can, when you go out of the building at night, you're not looking and seeing if someone's hiding in the bushes, those kinds of things. But it's overall, again, it's not going to stop an active shooter type situation, it may help you prevent a kid who's, thinking of robbing something, or and it will help. I mean, it's not a cure-all by any means.
Yeah,
But
definitely not for something like a shooting.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
What about when you install? It says clear surrounding, install bright lights, and keep greenery to low levels. So, I can imagine in the nighttime, if you have your lights on inside the masjid, and it's dark outside, people from outside can see the masjid inside very clearly, but people from the inside can't see the people from the
And back to this incident in Christchurch, this guy knew where to park. He knew roughly what he was doing. So he had obviously done some basic reconnaissance or familiarity with the property. So he knew a bit about it. He may have even pulled up a Google Maps and said, oh, okay, this is what it looks like on the map. So, he may have watched some things. So some things you do want some cover and concealment from what's going on in your building, and giving people cover and concealment. So if people are fleeing the building and they are able to get behind things or use things where he cannot see them behind them, cars and other things that might be, you have to take that all into account. If you have nothing but a big blank open flat area on all directions around the masjid, you're setting it up to get more people shot, because as they attempt to flee, they're just fleeing right into the open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That wouldn't help in this kind of context.
Right. It wouldn't help.
Father, read the next one.
Phone/SMS tree. Establish a phone or SMS tree so a designated group can instantly reach out to the community in times of crisis.
Yes. So this is, again, on the preventative, this is one of those ones that I was, so you're going to send a phone tree out later to who? Who's going to answer the phones? In Christchurch, you had 50 people. That's a significant proportion of the community. So who are you sending out your phone tree to? Who's responding and what are they doing? I mean, it sounds great from a media point of view, like, okay, we're all going to get together. I know that point's coming up, but it's not. This is like, phone trees are great when you want to organize like
a protest or something.
Yeah, or the protest. Exactly. In a crisis situation like this, you throw your phone tree right out the window. Okay, because there's not really, most of the people intimately involved in the masjid are going to be there already. Mm-hmm. If that's going on, particularly on a Jummah. So it's not, you can send SMS messages about it later. Oh, we're going to have a vigil. But from a security point of view, it doesn't really do that good. And particularly, I'm surprised they do like a phone tree or SMS tree or something like that. There's other ways of media to put things out too. So, I mean, but nonetheless, it's not that helpful at all.
Yeah.
But isn't it good to try to inform people, like ASAP?
Before it happens, you could probably, if they see the attack coming, they could send out SMS, hey, don't come to the mosque, or get help.
Right. But in this instance, a lot of times, that require, one of the things that, again, you have to look at the limitation of the community. If you don't have a dedicated in-house security personnel who are monitoring those cameras, who can initiate certain processes, who's going to initiate it? The people who may be tasked to initiating that in this instance, may have been shot. They themselves may not be there to initiate that process. So how is that? If you are like a lot of masjids, you only have maybe 3, 4, or 5 people that actually have any authority to do some of these things. So it becomes people send messages to each other and they say, are you at the masjid? Don't go there. They're getting deluged with SMSs, they're getting texts, they're getting this, but there's really a phone tree that, again, it's good for like.
It's nothing proactive.
But in a chaos type situation, it's not going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Next one, Fahad.
Safeguard documents. Critical documents for your mosque should be kept in a safe location with digitized backups. Wait, so what kind of documents are important to a mosque anyway? Like what, treasury or something?
Financial documents, marriage certificates, or things like that, if they have them. But
save the documents. We need the documents. I know.
But again, you just brought up, Amar, you just hit the nail on the head. So it's life before property. It's always life before property.
the masjid can burn to the ground with all the documents inside if everybody lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? So if you're talking about like, yes, documents are important. They are important for business continuity. They're important for other things. But today, if as part of your standard business practices, you don't have backups, then that's just a failure of standard business practice. It's not a security issue.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you lose your PhD thesis, doctoral thesis, because you only had it on one laptop and it crashed and burned, then
That's
you
your
shouldn't
fault.
get a PhD. But I mean, so really, I mean, what ICNA is doing is they're throwing out some feel like, oh, we got to put something out. So let's put out some of these general feel good things. It's like you just had an active shooter situation where 50 people were killed.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're telling them to make sure the documents are okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I just took that as like, are you tone deaf? I mean, that is very tone deaf. That is
blind.
It's kind of inconsiderate as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's inconsiderate. Exactly. Because, I mean, do you think any of these sisters or brothers who have lost their loved ones care even a bit whether the electric bill, okay, somehow got saved? They don't care. Okay. So again, it's always life above property, always life. And reactive things will not deal with the situation. They will never deal with the situation. When you have a real situation of potential force, you have to meet it with equal or greater, or you have to be willing to put distance between you and that. Because it's just not going to, there was an incident recently where we have this senator, Vermont, Senator Sanders, and he's pushing and he's using this incident, as are many others in New Zealand, of course, to say, oh, it's guns are bad, guns are bad.
No, it's so stupid.
But it's funny because they're at rallies with security people with guns guarding them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, and when you are in, who responded to the incident in Christchurch? It wasn't people with guns. It was people with guns. So whether or not you yourself are able and capable, legally, physically, mentally, whatever, to use force, be it a firearm or something else, to use force, you have to admit somebody has to use force to meet that.
Right.
100%.
Because right. And if you're relying on law enforcement to use force, you're waiting minutes for it. Minutes, and we're seconds making life or death. So you're the only potential force that's on site until someone arrives. So if somebody comes to me and says, I'm not comfortable using a firearm, I'm not comfortable using force, I don't think I could do this. Okay, if your security philosophy calls for you not to do that, and your security philosophy calls for you to put distance between you, because distance equals safety, to put distance between you, that's fine for you. If you
better have a bunch of exits then, right?
Yeah, that's right. You got to have a bunch of exits, and that's fine for you. But for me, I'm not going to take my chance. I'm going to adopt. I'm going to meet force with what force I can bring.
Agreed, 100%. And I want to add on this to your point. How you said it's not posted this thing. We're not through all of it yet. But you can see the idea is, we need to reach out to the community, have open mosque day, and reach out to people. There's a misunderstanding. No, it's not a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
People are evil. They want to kill us. And you can tell them, guys, Islam is this. Doesn't matter. They're going to do what they're going to do. And you have to defend yourself.
A misunderstanding is thinking that all Muslims pray east because you watched a movie.
Yeah.
That's a misunderstanding. And somebody comes to the masjid and they learn, not all Muslims pray east. That's an old okay, I get it. That's a misunderstanding. But generally, for somebody, and I don't want to steal the thunder from ICNA's points, but coming up ahead when they talk about like these things like open mosque day stuff, these are generally people that are already conceptually open to learning about Islam. They're not Islamophobics. Okay, They generally have already crossed a mental threshold where they are willing to learn something from a reason, from a common sense point of view. You're not going to get the Kurt Wilders in your masjid.
What's a Kurt Wilders?
Kurt Wilders is the radical, crazy Dutch politician who's very anti-Islam.
Oh, okay.
But what you will get, and it's rather interesting, is one of his subordinates actually has become a Muslim.
Yeah, I saw that.
Some of these radical Islamophobes, they do eventually crack and they start to come over. But that's not going to happen. That's rare.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing. You have to be able to defend yourself to stop something like this. Oh, bro, no, don't shoot us. We're actually good people. They don't care.
Yeah.
No, they're going to kill you regardless, man.
Yeah, they're terrorists.
I mean, we've all seen, there's so many of these, we've seen the movies and the films, and where the big hero takes on the guy with the gun. It's not like that in real life. It is scary. It is like you can lose your life. There's no reset. There's no pause. There's no
respawn.
Right.
Actually, go on.
Yeah, but the point is, if you don't try, you have zero chance.
Exactly.
If you sit there and just look at the shooter, you're offering nothing at all in the way of protection, self-protection, and you will more than likely be shot. And things like playing dead or hiding under bodies, these are things that, depending on the situation, you may find yourself wounded, and you may find yourself in a situation where that's the only thing you can do is hide behind a body or something because you are wounded. But if you are in a situation where you're capable and able, you have to try to meet force.
100%. And we have to take, like you said, we need to cultivate that security mindset. We should go into our communities, watch those videos, maybe find someone who's an expert, take classes.
Learn how to shoot a gun. Learn how to shoot a gun.
Yeah. Within
get a concealed carry license.
Right? Yep. And that's the other thing too, is don't say to yourself, well, I know nothing about guns, so I shouldn't do anything.
No, yeah, you
start. Do I think that if you know zero about firearms, okay, do I think you should go out and buy a firearm and then carry it around with you every day and think that you can protect yourself? No,
you need lots and lots of training for it. You
need training. You need to know what the legal ramifications are of not only owning that weapon, but using that weapon. Some states have, I was talking to, castle doctrine. Somebody comes in your house, they're deemed a threat, you can shoot them. Some states, even if they come in your house, you can't shoot them unless they actually are posing threat to you. So you can find yourself in one state is perfectly legal, but in another state is a murder.
But in a lot of places, you just can't get your hands on guns. So what would you do in that situation? I mean, today I went to. I just want to give you an example.
Yeah.
So today I went to a store, in which I purchased a knife for my dad, a really fancy one.
Yep.
So it was a military store.
Yep.
So they sell the old military equipment, like jackets and knives and I asked the guy what would be good for self-defense, self-protection. He shows me a couple of things. One is like an iPhone that it has a stun gun on it.
Yeah.
So it's a stun gun, but it's shaped like an iPhone. That's one. Second thing he showed me was pepper spray.
Yep.
And then the third thing he showed me was a black nightstick or a baton.
Yep.
That
yes,
at least used for protesters, right?
Yep. There are a wide variety of what are called non-lethal or less than lethal options out there. Knives generally get you in a lot of trouble vis-a-vis law enforcement in many jurisdictions, but also because they're not so easy to learn. To learn how to actually wield a knife and utilize it. Things like stun guns and that are reasonably effective from close proximity, but oftentimes if you're in that close proximity, you're better off trying to just disarm them if you're that close. Even the stun guns that work from distance, ones that you can fire and shoot out to 15 feet, you have to hit the target. You have to, if they have a lot of heavy clothes on, it doesn't always work. There's a lot. So you have to weigh the pros and cons. Again, if you live in an area where you can't get a firearm, sometimes this is the best option.
Right.
But again, there's a lot of, and in some instances, and again, check the laws where you are. In some instances, you may get in more trouble using a stun gun than you would a firearm. Some jurisdictions they're actually banned, and in some jurisdictions pepper spray, because what happens is people use it in the grocery store on the person next to them because they cut them off.
Oh wow!
So
That's
again,
so stupid. It
is. So, but again, if someone, the old saying goes, "Don't bring a knife to a gunfight."
Yeah, exactly.
If you can get a gun, and if you can be competent in its usage, you're not going to have any ADs. An AD is an accidental discharge. Okay, you're not going to be going to bathroom in the back of the restaurant and all of a sudden bang. Okay, these, you have to be competent in the usage of it. It can't be something you're going to buy and then put it home in a safe, and when you're at Juma, it's at home. So and you also have to comply with with certain things. If you have schools, for instance, you cannot bring a firearm to a school. So you can't bring a firearm to a courtroom. There are places that have been designated as gun-free zones, whether we like it or not.
Right, so you have to obey the law, essentially.
You have to obey. You can't bring a firearm when you're flying from Phoenix to Chicago.
For
okay?
sure.
So you do have to obey the rules. So you have to, even if you own a firearm, you still have to be prepared to deal with the situation in an unarmed fashion.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And to contemplate that. But again, if you're in proximity, closing distance with these folks, the most professional operators in the world will have difficulty maintaining focus if lights are flashing, things are getting thrown at them, people are coming at them, they don't know from where. You will mess them up.
And even that one guy who did tackle him in the masjid.
Yeah,
I forgot his name. Do you remember his name? That one.
I don't remember the brother. I remember his son's name, Talha, but I don't remember his name. I have to look it up. But yeah, he made an effort. He made an attempt. And he actually got hands on the guy's firearm.
Yeah, he did.
And he got him down. He got him down.
And he did, right. So, those that may have been, even though we don't know, that definitely went into the mindset of the shooter. That definitely
Naeem
did
Rashid
something.
was his name.
Right. So, maybe one or two people were managed to slip out just in that one time period. So, maybe even though he ultimately didn't succeed in stopping the guy, he may have opened up enough of a window for maybe even one or two people.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, exactly. And then 40 of us have that mindset. At least like 5 would be successful.
Yeah. I mean,
also self-sacrifice,
Yeah, and that's the other part of it, self-sacrifice too, in the sense that you understand that, again, this is our responsibility as men in our community to protect our community and to protect,
protect the women folk as well.
Protect the women and the children and other people who can't protect themselves. Advocate for them.
I was going to say it's more okay for a man to die than it is for a woman or a child to die in any community.
Absolutely.
And this is man code. You guys should know this.
Yes, man 101. I mean, and that's what I was taught. Also, growing up is that, I come from a very rural Vermont lifestyle, much more similar to, as I like to tell people, I didn't become a Muslim so much as I realized that I was already a Muslim. So,
like similar traditional values and the mindset with like gender interaction and like having ghira for your sisters and your women folk.
I mean, it's a fact, and I know Fahim could probably give you the most accurate, brother Fahim could probably give you the most accurate percentage, but like the same size male, weight for weight, has like 40 or something % more upper body strength than a woman does.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so you're built already for combat.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that there are sisters out there who
They're strong, yeah, of course.
They're strong,
Thanks.
and they can try to protect themselves when they have to, but
we shouldn't assume that's the case with.
No, but that's like a last resort kind of thing.
We shouldn't assume. Exactly, it's a last resort. We shouldn't assume, and two, they shouldn't have to.
Exactly.
There should be a long line of us standing up before even one sister has to think about it.
100%, yeah. That's how it is with the fifth as well.
Yeah. But, going on with some of their points, I know they had, what was some of the other good one they had?
Yeah, Fahad, read them.
Yeah, I can read them.
Media compliance. Okay.
Compliance check.
Compliance check. And so it's like they're preparing for an audit or something. So yeah, we're in compliance. We've got all of our signs up and all that. And then they had one have a media contact or something like that. I'm like,
that's a post thing.
Yeah, that's a post thing. And not only that,
but is it proactive? Is it proactive by any means, trying to reduce the amount of Islamophobia that exists within your own community?
It is proactive, but at this point, there is so much noise out there. There is so much noise out there on social media, on everything, anti-Islam, that I see it on my own Facebook feed from people who I'm related to.
SubhanAllah.
Okay, so there's so much of it everywhere out there that
it's not really going to make a difference.
It's not going to make a lot of difference on a small micro scale.
Right.
Yes, you should do the events where you have the open mosque. Yes, you should invite in the local, organizations and be on good terms with people.
But do not think for 1 second that it's a solution to.
It's not going to stop. A lot of these guys, or we haven't seen a gal do this yet, but a lot of these nut jobs are literally in their underpants in their parents' basement at 2 a.m. in the morning, writing all sorts of manifestos and drivel. They are not out learning objectively with common sense, good judgment. They are in many ways what we've seen we've seen it in our own community. We've seen brothers who have kind of gone off reservation.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is you meet this one brother, and then the next year you meet the brother and he's 180 degrees the other direction, and he's spouting stuff, he's sharing stuff on media. He wants you to watch this video. It's you can see this tendency in some people who sit on social media or who live in
these
their
nihilists.
They live in their own world.
This guy specifically, he was talking about racial preservation, this, that, the other.
No one talks like that anymore. No one talks like that anymore.
Why doesn't he? Even if he wants to do that, why doesn't he go marry like a white woman, have 10 babies? He
talked about that in his manifesto.
No, I know he had some BS reason, but I'm just saying,
this
a bit off topic though, Amar.
Yeah. This symbol he had was part of this great repopulation, some garbage out of France or something to do with the white race. But like I said, I think he was throwing up a lot of smoke. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I don't really care if the guy comes in with a white power flag
or a Hindu flag,
comes in with the Knights Templar cross or what. Okay, the guy's killing Muslims.
Yeah, he's a killer, evil.
He's a killer. And when I could guarantee you that about the first time that someone like this steps foot in a masjid and they encounter a prepared jama'ah, the death toll is going to be 0 or very small, and they're going to be very sorry that they stepped foot in there. Mm-hmm. Because what gets handed over to the police is not going to be in good shape.
Yeah, 100%. The kid, that's how it should be. It's kind of like when a kid gets bullied, the bully doesn't stop until you fight back.
Right.
It's the same thing.
And again, this guy's cowardly. He's purposefully hitting a target. He purposely said he wanted to kill women and children.
Yeah, he said that he wanted to kill innocents.
And so when they're encountered with force, a guy like this is going to stop. Now, on the other side, if you had a professional, if you had somebody who really knew what they were doing and really coordinated and really whatever, yeah, it's going to be difficult to counter someone like that. But most folks in that category usually have half a wit about them not to do something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and like I said,
someone like that's probably like, fighting in a war or something. Like,
right. I don't think he was an expert. He wasn't a novice either. But what he showed with his skill with firearms was enough to show that he obviously knew what he was doing to some degree. But he wasn't confident enough in his skills to counter what the brother did at Linwood Masjid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was not able to deal with that. Yeah. And had we had more instances like that, it would have neutralized it much quicker.
More people should get credit card machines.
Well, yeah. I mean, credit card machines. I mean, exactly. But I mean, seriously, anything. A phone, even your phone.
A phone. Yeah.
There is an instant. You go for the eyes. Is an immediate reaction. You go for anybody's eyes is to turn away. Mm-hmm. Immediate. There is no human on the face of planet Earth that will stand there and let you poke them in the eye.
That's a very important point.
So
that point will save people's lives.
Yeah, go for eyes. Okay. Anything you can do, like and like I said, making the place dark, turning the lights back on. That's why pepper spray is so effective. We mentioned that earlier. Is partly because it gets in the eyes. The eyes burn, they tear. It doesn't. One of the problems with pepper spray too is you realize that when you spray it, generally anything in the vicinity is going to have problems, including yourself. Right. So pepper spray is that's one of the cons of it. Is you if you use it, you have to be aware you're going to get it as well.
Yeah. I kind of wish, like, in that mosque thing, that some of the brothers went Allahu Akbar and just like ran into him.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
We're going full jihad mode.
No, well, the guy said he yelled slurs at him. He tried to distract him.
Yeah.
He threw the credit card machine at him. He was trying to distract. He was like in that state of mind that I need to distract him. I need to get him away from the mosque. We have to be like that. Like that's the only way.
Right. It's kind of like I just for some reason I don't know why this popped in my head, but it's kind of like Jurassic Park and the dude Jeff Goldblum or whatever's trying to get attention of the dinosaur over here.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he was trying to draw his attention, like saying, "I'm over here. Shoot at me. And that bought time. And that was one of the most important things is time, allows you to get some distance and allowed people to get away while you were doing that. If you had 5-6 brothers doing that, that's 5-6 things he has to pay attention to. That's 5-6 directions that he has to guard against. That's, all these different pieces. It stops him. It neutralizes him. It makes him his, as they usually say in the military, it makes his combat effectiveness decline.
0.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. People would say like, "Oh no, he would just shoot them normally," but that's clearly not the case because it would throw off his composure.
Right, exactly. And you can, and again, you can be shot and keep going.
Yeah.
Even if you were shot, right in your point blank, you generally can keep going.
That's actually good to know as well.
Yeah.
For how many seconds do you think?
It depends on where you're shot. If you're shot in the abdominal cavity, which is below the lungs and chest, below the diaphragm, you are going to have a lot of pain. But if you have a lot of adrenaline pumped up, you're probably not even going to really realize that you're badly hurt for at least a few minutes. You generally are going to, especially you're going to see, that you have blood. Some people don't even realize they've been shot until they actually see blood, and then they realize it's theirs. You get that adrenaline
rush
pump up.
Right.
You don't really, you're not aware of it. Generally, the only thing that's going to stop you is if a major artery is hit. In which case you're going to lose blood so quickly, you may lose consciousness. You may, you're going to get, you're not going to be able to move very effectively, you're gonna collapse. Or if a major bone structure like your hip or something like that gets hit, then you're not going to be able to move. But generally, a tissue or a flesh wound or even a chest wound, if it's not anything immediately vital, you might not even notice it. In fact, and the thing is, the shotgun that he used originally, most people recognize a shotgun from point blank range is actually much more devastating.
From far it's not.
Yeah, a rifle or a carbine like what he used second, at close range, the round is traveling at such a high velocity, it's probably just going to pass right through you. So the round is not going to, you're going to have a small entry and exit wound. It's not going to be that massive trauma that you'd see per se with a shotgun from close range. Yeah. So there's, you will have some fight left in you if you adopt that combat mentality.
Yeah, and the thing is, like,
men should also,
for people that
men should be ready to.
Okay, go. Yeah, for people. Let me finish, and then you can say it. For people that are like skeptical and they like to say, "Well, you don't know what you would do." The thing is, you have to think, "I will act," because you can't afford not to think like that. It's like going to a fight. You can't think, "What if I lose?" You can't afford to think like that.
Right. You have to. The thing is that if you don't try, you have zero chance.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you don't try, you have zero chance. So you have to have the mindset of, "I can make it. I will win," and you just have to have that mindset, given the training and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and yes, someone will always come up with an obscure example and say, well, wouldn't you do this, this, and this? Again, it's always, this is part of the reason why you have to adopt the proper philosophy and think through, because there's 100 million situations on top of the 100 million you think of. And you cannot possibly figure out and plan out every single one. Mm-hmm. So you adopt it overall philosophy and then go from there. And some of the other points that they threw up, create a crisis management team, some of these other ones, that relationship with law enforcement, they're not horrible ideas, but they're not active. They're not designed to meet level of threat. Mm-hmm. I do recommend, and I do think that anybody should be aware that if you have a competent local law enforcement agency, and I use the word competent because some law enforcement agencies, if you're in a small area, they don't have a lot of resources. You might need to reach out to a larger, a provincial or a state police. But if you have a competent local law enforcement, it is a good idea to get them to come in, meet, people, get an idea what the layout of the building is, maybe give you some pointers in that. But it's not going to, they're not going to be there at that moment when the shooter comes, like in Christchurch. They're going to be coming after the fact. And, it's an important thing too. I noticed one other thing that just popped into my head was Brother Abdulaziz was arrested by the police when they arrived on scene. And they did not release him until half hour later. And the reason why was because one of the witnesses said they saw him with a gun. He had picked up the shooter's gun and he had thrown it through the windshield of the car, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, through the side thing of the car.
Yeah.
So they didn't know if he was a bad guy or a good guy. So one of the other things about thinking is your community needs to be prepared for what happens when the police arrive. Because the police are going to come into your masjid and they're not going to know who's good guy and who's bad guy. They don't know if there's one shooter, two shooters, or three shooters.
So that's why you need to have a good relationship, right?
Exactly. So you need to have a good relationship. You can't be, look, we may disagree with some of the things that various government agencies and various governments do in the West. Mm-hmm. We may disagree with, what policing policy NYPD has. Mm-hmm. But we also need to realize that if we have a masjid in New York City and there's a shooting, that they're the ones that are going to come. So we need to take a proactive approach in knowing, okay, this is what would happen. You may not like that because you've just been traumatized, you've been shot at, and then here come guys with guns pointing at you again.
They're going to be scared.
Right, exactly. So you need to prepare people, especially children and kids. They are going to be completely traumatized. You do need to be prepared for what comes after. And so things like crisis management team, you're gonna need counseling. You're gonna need an imam that has the ability to counsel. Not all imams can do that. You're gonna have people who are not gonna want to go back to that masjid. So you do have to think about all those things as well. But really, when I saw that Ignis, I was just like, you're not talking. Yeah, that happens, and people need to, we need to have a crisis management. We need to have this. We need to have this. These are all good things, but you're not stopping anything. You're not stopping the shootings. You're not stopping the vandalisms, the graffitis, or anything. You're not actively doing anything if you don't adopt the right mindset.
Right. Also, like another message to the guys is that be like in this kind of situation, this is a chance for you to be martyred in a halal way. So,
right. Yeah, that's the thing. We know. If you, no one wakes up in the morning and says, "I hope this happens."
Right.
Okay. But if it does, and I
want to go out the right way.
On the day of judgment, on Yawmul Qiyamah, do you want to be the guy who ran and hid, or do you want to be the guy who saved
so and so in life?
So and so.
And running from the battlefield, isn't that like a big sin?
It is. But again,
this is not a battlefield, though.
It's not a battlefield, of course.
Right. Again, but again, there are
whatever.
individual circumstances. We had a sister who was outside the masjid. She went back in to try to rescue her husband, who was quadriplegic, who's in a wheelchair.
SubhanAllah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Bangladeshi sister.
Yeah, exactly. Sister Husna.
Yeah.
She tried to go back in to help, get him out because she was worried about him. But there are situations where if you're a brother, for instance, and you are able to get your two children out, okay, and you're not able to go back in to get your wife or this, that's what I was saying before. There's always scenarios somebody can throw out there, and you can say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? So you do the best you can do, but you start with the combat mentality of I'm going to do something.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to do something. I'm not going to not do anything or not even think about it.
Muslim men should aspire to get to a point at which they do not fear death.
Right. It's like when you crash, if you get in an automobile accident, you have to think, what am I going to do if I get in an automobile accident? Am I going to stay in my car and call, or am I going to get out of my car and try to help other people? If I get out of my car and try to help other people, I might get hurt. Somebody else might crash into me.
Right.
But these are things you need to think about in advance. You need to think about things and then have the I'm a doer mentality. I'm an actor. Yeah, I'm not I'm not an observant. I'm not a spectator.
But obviously you want to save yourself first, but at the same time you want to do things at the same time. When I learned CPR, because I'm CPR certified, I was told that if there's a dangerous situation, like if they're in oil and it's like a car accident, that I shouldn't go risk myself because it's going to make two problems then rather than just one.
Correct. There is again an element to that. You don't want to add to the problem, but you also have to recognize the opportunity sometimes to kill two birds with one stone, or to gamble, in essence. I don't, not use that word, but to take a chance, to try. So sometimes, yes, I see the guy in the room passed out, and maybe I shouldn't go in that room because there might be something in the air. But at the same time, many people have been saved because somebody did something they weren't supposed to do.
Precisely.
And so, are you supposed to run at a gunman? I don't think there's a lot of people out there who go, "Are you crazy? You don't run at a guy with a gun."
Yeah, but one of the guys did it, and he almost won.
But exactly, that's the point. But you try, you again. There are doers and there's spectators, and usually the doers come out ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you don't in this situation,
you have Jannah to wait for.
You have Jannah. Exactly. You did say, again, your intention is to help, save life, to protect, guard, and whether you succeed or not, the benefit is there.
Yeah. What's his name? I think it was Tariq bin Ziyad, when he burned his boats on the shores of southern Spain.
Yes.
He said that before us men is either victory if we're alive, or Jannah if we die.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so he inspired, and that's what we need to do with our younger generation now, is inspire a level of confidence that I like the term that we're lions walking the earth.
Yeah.
I
love it.
And you got to go out and get something.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not going to let a little fly get in my way. And there's a lot of these, guys out there that are going to do things like this. They're going to throw the pig head in front of the masjid. They're going to, call on the phone. They're going to do all these things. Meet these guys head on.
What do you mean by meet these guys head on? Like, what do you suggest? Like, if there's a pig head in front of my masjid, what am I supposed to do?
Well, no,
call the authority, of course, but.
Well, yeah, you call the authorities, but I mean, if you see a guy coming running,
intimidate him a little bit.
Then you challenge him.
Yeah, call his boss.
Yeah, call his boss. Yeah. You coward, come on. You want to throw a pig head at our masjid? Come on.
We're armed.
And because these guys that do this kind of stuff, they're
cowards to begin with, right?
They're cowards.
So if you show just a little bit of ferocity, you show a little bit of intimidation, they'll get intimidated.
They're picking on you, and they're because they think you're weak. They think that you're not.
So don't show them that you're weak.
Right. You don't show them you're weak. You fight back. And again, that's part. It's part of that combat mentality. It's also psychological warfare, in the sense that if you put even the seed of doubt in this guy's head that he's going to get beat down the moment he steps foot on any masjid, he's going to think, I don't think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, 100%. And even if that only works in half of the people that go on to do something, you've still stopped half.
Precisely. So, you save lives.
Yeah. Exactly.
Also, do you want to continue going through the 10 tips of hikmah?
I think we've hit all of them.
I think we've hit most of them.
Coalition building with faith-based and civic organizations.
Yeah, it's already happening.
Yeah. This is the same kind of stuff that I've seen. Unfortunately, a lot of our Islamic organizations, be it ICNA or some of the other groups that are out there, have become kind of mouthpieces for, I guess I would say, a lot of passive liberal left kind of causes.
Welcome to our show.
What's that?
Welcome to the Mail's Monday Mail.
Exactly. And all these things that they've picked up, I mean, they're out saying, they're out promoting this sister who next week is out promoting LGBTQ, causes, they're picking up their talking points. They're not deriving their opinions from Islam. Mm-hmm. They're not basing their thought process on, well, what's the haq? What is the hukum here? They're not approaching it from that.
Right. It's a bit of a side topic. That's like a side tangent.
Yeah. But we can do that next time.
But when it comes to this issue, that's what, particularly with the 10 issues of what, I mean, really, Islam tells us how to respond to threats, how to respond to, Islam's not a religion of.
It's very practical.
Right. It's very practical. Islam's not a religion of, well, somebody comes running at you with a gun, we adopt the Buddha philosophy of, pacifism. No, that's not Islam at all.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at. Is that it's not surprising that ICNA would put something out like this.
Yeah.
Because they're not basing their security advice or their thought process on instances like this on Islam.
Right.
They're basing it on a socio-political calculation. That's not in line.
Precisely.
Yeah, definitely. So to recap, the practical steps that we can take as individuals in our community to develop a security mindset is contact people that are maybe experts, find out our relationship with the law enforcement as a mosque, find out the exit entry points of the mosque, maybe take initiative to maybe
implement these things yourself,
implement these yourself, but also
bring it up to your community leaders.
Right. Bring it up to your community leaders. Yes, look for resources in your community, but go to your community leaders and don't be afraid to ask the question saying, have you thought about this? Maybe we should start, because any solution has to be a solution for that location and for that community. Because what this masjid can do and what that masjid can do are going to be a little different. There are those overarching themes like we talked about today. You've got to have situational awareness. You've got to have that combat mentality. You've got to have this idea that you're going to meet force with force, or you're going to put distance between you and force. But there are those generalities, but you still need to come up with a, Masjid an-Nur solution, a Masjid as-Salam solution. You need to come up with a madrasa, this solution, and like I said, for the schools, the Islamic schools, for anything, where do you take your kids to an Islamic daycare? To your work, even your workplace. When you go to work, what would happen if you at work are in an active shooter situation? Do you know if you work in a hospital? Where would you go? What would you do? These are things that professionals in all industries across the board should be thinking about. And if they're not, we should be asking them. So go to our board and say, and if they say, well, we don't know, then you can say, okay, well, let's start looking, and you can start grabbing resources and pulling people in. Again, you may find that retired law enforcement officer who will come to your masjid and will give a workshop. Okay? You can, don't be afraid to seek knowledge where it is. And again, there are personal courses you can take. There are free resources out there that you can learn from. There's all these agencies will put things out. Some of it's not the greatest of advice, but it starts the conversation. It starts you on the path of understanding what security is. It's understanding what risks you face, developing a security program that fits your philosophy of how to mitigate and lessen those risks, and then implementing those solutions. Am I going to train myself to be armed and capable? Or am I going to drop those 20 pounds and be ready to take on somebody? Is it, just starting to pay attention to the fact that, hey, there's a dark alley nearby. Maybe we should think something about that. Maybe somebody could be doing something bad over there. All those things, start that process.
Right. I remember an hour ago, I asked you, if you were now responsible for Masjid al-Nur, what would you have done differently?
What would you do now?
Yeah.
What would I do now? Right now,
I also like,
Right.
what would you do of that? What would you do then as well? Because I don't think you completely
Okay.
finished that.
Yeah, I didn't finish it. Well, I think the first thing they should have done was, from what I saw, the interior of the masjid was not really that well laid out for egress. I think the sisters area, particularly, I looked at, they seem to be bottled in. I would have ensured that every person had proper egress from any room, any main hall, or any area where there's a concentration of people should have had at least 2 egress points. So I would have looked at the building, the floor plan of the building, literally, and looked at what improvements could have been made, just simple things about doors and that could have helped with the flow of people. Some of the other things I would have done was, depending on what their parking situation was, allowing people to park there and have such an open compound. They had walls, literally like walls with iron gates on top of them, but they had open gates. I would have had some volunteers and other people outside in the parking lot, not just there to just be alert as to what's going on, but also just to, help people as they're coming in, greet people as they're coming in. We do this a lot of times on Eids. We do this where we have large numbers. You see the brothers out there on Eid helping people and stuff. We should be doing this even on the Jama'ats. We should be doing this where there's always somebody outside who's a little bit alert of what's going on. And we also we should have been, I would have sought some cooperation from the other masjids in the area about potentially sharing some of the responsibilities of helping each other out. If we needed to stagger our jama'as or staggering our things so that we had brothers available to guard each other's spaces. Those would be some of the most basic things I would have done right off the start. Because again, a camera, yeah, it's good, but if somebody's not watching, it's not helpful. It's better to have a person there who's actually watching and looking, because they can raise the alarm immediately, or they can act immediately. In addition to that, the other thing they could have done, and it is done in a lot of other places, is they could have asked the local police department to be there if there was an officer available on Jummah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
that's a
mom
really
does
good
that
idea.
sometimes.
Yeah. Now, sometimes if there's a car accident or something, the officer leaves. He needs to respond. They don't have the resources to put a special detailed police officer for every single event. But more than likely, the instances of which we are going to be higher risk are going to be on Jummah and any of the Eid prayers or any of the larger gatherings. If you contact your local law enforcement and if you ask them, is it possible for your officer to, maybe do some traffic monitoring in the area at that time, or just stay outside during this critical time period, or drive by, or that may itself be enough to get some of the low-hanging fruit, particularly because if they see a potential threat, they see somebody who's going to challenge them there, they're less likely to carry it out. I have yet to see a place where any of these active shooters have seen a police car or seen law enforcement and said, I'm going to go attack and kill these people anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So that's also a possibility. Post what's happened now, I don't think that masjid will have much problem with security, because I think the government in New Zealand is not going to allow that to happen again anytime soon. I think more than likely they will probably have a special security law enforcement detail at all the masjids there for quite some time. We've seen this in New York City. We've seen it in London before, where there have been attacks, and for a very short period of time, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, law enforcement presence in and around masjids has been higher. But the pre thing is too, the other thing I would have done is I would have gotten my community together to begin to understand. This is before the active shooter event. Everybody should have been brought aboard on understanding risk, understanding, what the program is, What are we going to do? What's going to happen if? Because people would have been less likely. You're like we have a saying here because it happens so often. You've probably seen it in Ohio or anywhere. We say a deer in the headlights, where there's a deer in the road and he's got bright lights in his eyes. He just freezes. You're going to get less of that
kind of response.
Condition black if you start the conversation in advance. Just even thinking about it, just saying, hey, this could actually happen, is going to start the wheels turning and thinking, well, what if that happened? The brother who greeted the shooter at the door was so back in condition white that he wasn't aware of the imminent threat until the absolute last moment. Some brothers said that they thought the guy was a policeman, or they thought he was a military or something, and that maybe there was something going on. You can't assume. Again, you have to elevate from yellow to orange. It's a potential threat. And then if it's a real threat, it's red. But you can't assume right from the beginning, it's a guy with a gun. It must be a policeman. You can't assume things. You have to operate. You have to be skeptic. You have to be skeptical. You have to be aware. You do have to have a dose of paranoia, not too much. And again, don't get so fearful. That's what people like this want too. They want us not to go to masajid. They want us to be scared. And that's the last thing we should do.
Precisely. Yeah. Go to masjids even more.
Exactly.
As a result of this. And make a bigger presence of yourself. Make more babies, yeah. But have a bigger presence of yourself within the masjid. Visit it more as a result. Not only that'll add in terms of security, you'll get benefits and hasanat, and you'll basically defeat the purpose of whatever this guy was trying to accomplish as well.
And again,
3 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to leave this out because I am married and I do have 2 children.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if there are sisters who are fearful of something, then it's our responsibility to alleviate that.
100%.
Yes.
100%. So if a sister is not coming to the masjid because she's scared of walking out the masjid late at night, then there's something we ought to be doing so that doesn't happen.
Yeah. 100%. There should be better communication between brothers and sisters.
Exactly. Because, they have their own unique, they're sometimes they're bringing food for our dinners at the masjid. They're taking care of children. They're doing other things. And
they have unique risks.
Right. And they have unique risks. And they don't have, they ain't got time. As they say, they ain't got time for all this other stuff.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's a man's responsibility. Security is.
That's on us.
Yeah.
So, we want them attending the halakas. We want them bringing the children for the tajweed lessons.
We want the biryani.
And the biryani. Yes, exactly. Right. And it seriously, brothers, I hate to say it, but like, if the sisters get together and they say, you guys ain't hacking it here, we're fearful.
That's insulting. Scared.
That's insulting. That's bad. Mm-hmm. We need there should be enough alpha males around.
Hey.
Enough.
I got you.
They should feel confident that nothing is going to happen to them. And that if something does happen, that we are going to do everything that we can to decrease the risk to them.
Precisely.
Yeah, definitely.
So, do you want to talk about the shooter himself at all?
I think a lot of planning went into this.
Like I remember you said the way he filmed it was kind of like a video game.
Yeah. This is, it fit the FPS genre, the first person shooter genre. It's like Call of Duty or something like that. And this GoPro technology, mounting it on the helmet, this isn't just something he thought of. It's something that was very purposeful. He wanted this to appear to people. He wanted the video out. He live streamed. He purposely set everything up. The guy probably even checked whether he had internet connection. Whether he had a connection near them. The guy went through some steps. He dropped his manifesto 10 minutes before the attack. And then he headed there. This implies he had some pre-planning and he had thought things out, where he was going to park, what he was going to do.
Definitely.
So again, if you make your community look intimidating, if you do some things, if he sees that you've got brothers standing out there every Friday, if they see that you have taken some concrete measures, like, you know, those alleys and things like that you've contacted police and
law enforcement, yeah,
right, and he sees things like that, he's going to be, this is a no low-hanging fruit. You know, there's a, you know, I might not be successful here.
Yeah, it'd be expensive to kill, basically.
Exactly. And, you know, and he may end up being a total, either trying it and failing or not trying it at all. You know, and so, and ultimately, I mean, we obviously don't want anybody to try something like this.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want active shooters, and we don't want to discourage them from our masjid just so they go down the road to the next one.
Precisely.
But, you know, we do want to put out across the board, all communities, all of us, we want to put out that, no, we're not to be messed with. We're, it's kind of like the, you know, we want the guy to walk into the Wild West saloon, pull out his gun, and then have 20 guns pointed back at it, you know, figuratively, depending on where you are again. But, yeah, you know, just, you know, having that level of intimidation that that he's not going to go into any masjid and do that. The other very troubling thing about this particular guy is, again, how he got the permits for what he had in New Zealand, considering his history and travel history and some other stuff. He said he made money off Bitcoin or something.
Or some sort of crypto.
Yeah. And, you know, he didn't have a great car, but he had some, you know, expensive weaponry and, you know, ammunition. He obviously had spent a lot of time practicing with it. Something's not right with this guy, considering the countries he went to and kind of his guy. I'm not by nature a conspiracy theorist. I generally believe that the most obvious explanation usually is correct.
But this is sketch.
But
why is it sketch, Amar?
Yeah, there's some questions here, and I know some countries, like I know Turkey has opened up an investigation to find out what he did while he was there, who he met, and what he was doing.
Right.
He visited a few months before the coup there. Not saying he's involved in that. I'm just saying that, you know, he was there. He went to North Korea. That's enough to get you on any flag.
What the hell is he doing in North Korea?
But again, I mean, I don't care if you're a tourist in North Korea or not. The number of Westerners that have been in North Korea, you could put that on probably, you know, you could easily put that on a list of a few thousand. Okay. Those names are known. I mean, if you fly into the U.S., they know what countries you visited to. I mean, all the passports now are digital passports. They have biometrics. I mean, you're getting your retina scanned. You're getting all that stuff when you arrive in various places. So how he could not be flagged for any reason whatsoever when he went to get a permit to purchase a firearm or anything like that. And again, that's just following New Zealand laws. Not that I necessarily agree with New Zealand laws through and through, but based on their own law, I find it very strange he was able to get they go by Class A, Class B, whatever. He was able to get the appropriate class license after a background check was done, without question. And I'm pretty sure they probably in New Zealand are doing their own head scratching and digging, wondering what didn't happen, what information wasn't shared.
Right. So what about like this ideology and the information that's being spread? What can we do about that from a security perspective?
From a security perspective, I think that there's a lot that our community leaders and activists can do to continue to put out the message. I don't think, you know, our scholars and that they can't just, you know, sit up on high and not think of practical issues. They themselves also need to stress the importance to the communities of, you know, of basic practical matters of security and things like that. And they need to do their part in getting out and countering messages like what this guy has. I think most people in places like New Zealand and in the West, they understand. They get it. They understand that there's Muslims in their communities because of life circumstances. Muslims have come here as professionals, or they've come here because where they were wasn't a safe place to be. And I think that most people are okay with that. And I think that the Muslims getting those messages out and getting the proper narrative whenever they can is very important. Don't let the narrative like this guy had, oh, Muslims are breeding us out, we're gonna, take over. Letting these narratives go unchallenged is a definite no.
It needs to be called out.
It needs to be called out. And I know I do it. When I have a family member, or when I have somebody, or somebody says something or something I see, I call it out. And I see it sometimes more so than other people because I'm a white American. Mm-hmm. And I've had people say to me, they're Muslim, something like this, not even having a clue. So you challenge it every chance you get. One of the best examples I always use when they say something about, this, and they ought to go back, and I'd say, oh yeah, about 30% of your hospital staff just left. To kind of break the ice and laugh a little bit about it and say, no, look, come on, these are regular folks. They're your doctors, they're your engineers, they're your,
they're just normal people.
They're normal people. They're Muslims. Okay, woo,
Yeah, they're basically like the Amish, except with technology. That's basically right. Like, how is a Muslim any different than like an Orthodox Jew or Orthodox conservative Christian?
Exactly. And I think the other part of it is too is that if you are looking for a reason to hate something, you'll always find it.
Agreed.
You'll rationalize reasons up.
Right. Exactly. So you got this whole entire, and it's not just Islamophobia. This stuff jumps in. We have these problems within our communities as well. We have we have colorism in our own community. This one's lighter and this one's darker, and these also come. So anytime stuff like this, we gotta shout out. That guy came into the masjid to kill Muslims. He didn't come into the masjid to shoot brown people. He didn't come into the masjid.
No, it was Muslims.
Black. Right.
He hates white reavers.
Right.
In particular.
That's the one thing he hates.
Right.
In particular.
So, right. Exactly. So, we need to, all these negative things, we need to, again, we can control what we ourselves do. And we can influence those around us, and and even if we can't influence those around us, we can at least make dua for them. We can at least say, oh, inshallah, somebody turned the light on in this community. We can do that. So take those steps of starting that conversation, of seriously thinking about, back when I started in the beginning, we were talking about stuff. I said, about this 7-year-old kid who slips in the wudu area. Start asking questions about stuff like that, because this stuff leads into the next question, into the next, it all comes together.
Right. So in a masjid, what would you say the biggest risk is? What do you got to be thinking of if you're designing a masjid?
If you're designing
top 5 or 4.
Yeah, the biggest things I think you need to think of in a masjid is you need to think of the flow of people. I think the top priority is egress. How do you get people out of the building quickly? So if I were designing a masjid, one of the first things I would think of is we're always trying to fit more brothers in the saf. We're always trying to straighten the lines. We have a very high number of people in a very small space. People have a tendency in an emergency of any kind to all want to go out the door they came in. Okay.
True.
One of the first things we need to do, whether it be a fire, whether it be an active shooter, whether it be any of these threats, one of the first things you need to think about when it comes to a masjid is, how do people get out of the building? We heard in some instances, brothers were smashing windows to get out.
That's good.
Can your windows be broken? Do you want them to be, or are you going to install ballistic windows or stuff that people are smashing? These are things you need to think about. So that'd be the first thing I think about is egress, how to get in and out of the building. The second thing I would think about is access control. Of getting out of the building is one thing. You may have 8 ways to get out of the building, but how many ways do you have to get into the building? And are those ways controlled? So if you have a brother's entrance and a sister's entrance, that doesn't mean that somebody should be able to come in a side door or a back door. Those may need to be just exits only with little alarms. So the first thing I would think of is how do people get out? The second thing I think of is how do people get in? Access control. You should be able to be in the front of your building, and anybody coming into your building on Juma, you should be able to see them coming in that door. Nobody should be able to come into the back of the masjid or into the side door, or nobody should be propping the door open with a paint can.
Never.
Things like that. No, it should be a controlled entrance access. The other thing is that is line of sight. You need to have, your masjid shouldn't be so cookie cutter with so many rooms in rooms and rooms in rooms, or houses that have been repurposed. Opening it up a little bit is a little better. There are negatives to it as well. But when law enforcement arrives, or when you're in that active shooter situation, if you hear bang, bang, bang,
you don't know where it is.
You're in a room and you may be running to danger. If you go to flee, you may run the wrong direction. It's hard to tell where shots are coming from. So one thing is having clear lines of sight so people can easily, and that goes along with having good egress so people can go and go out. Another very important security element, I think, for buildings is to have a plan in place for how the masjid is secured, opened, and resecured. There should be a checklist that goes along is who has keys, who has these things, who's responsible to open the door, who's responsible for making sure the door is locked. So again, we have other threats other than active shooters. We have robberies, we have vandalism, we have other things. If the last brother to leave the masjid doesn't have the key to lock the masjid, and the masjid doesn't get locked, and we come in the next day and find out the masjid burned down, okay? So that is another key element, I think, to the piece is that we need to have a formal plan of how the masjid is opened and closed. If it's a 24/7 access masjid, there are ways to do that. Is there always going to be a brother among the group there? There are electronic control systems. You guys might use some of these at work or university where you use little beep cards. These are not overly cost prohibitive. So managing that way is another important thing. I would stress also good and decent lighting and other things in the building is important. You shouldn't have dark areas or areas that are poorly lit inside the masjid. It should be reasonably well lit. People need to be able to, in an emergency, you have to remember some brothers and sisters are older. They may have vision problems, vision impairment. Those clear lines of sight with well lit ways out are very, very important. So good. And another thing is good signage. Signs and even evacuation little things in the map. Some areas require this, but signage is also important. Letting people know what is okay, what's not okay. Do you allow backpacks? Do you allow cell phones? We put signs up everywhere, but having good, very clear and effective communication to the Jama'ah of how to use the building.
I know in Pakistan, they frisk people down.
Yeah. We're not there yet, I don't think. But just being aware that someone could walk into a building with a backpack, and they could sit down, and you don't necessarily know, it's just a brother from outside of town. And then
you don't know what even is in the backpack. It could be like a pressure cooker thing.
Right.
Or like
exactly.
some sort of bomb.
So having clear signage and things like that, and saying, we don't allow this, and then that, it raises that level of awareness to people, so that I see that the sign says people shouldn't have. So if I see someone who does, I can say, oh, brother, I noticed they don't have a sign. We're supposed to leave our stuff outside. It goes again along with that situational awareness level. Another thing I would do in the masjid is a lot of walls and other areas should be constructed properly, in the sense that if brick is better, would be my brick is better. Bullets don't go through brick. A good solid construction of a building is more important. If you just have curtains and things like that, sometimes things are necessary, but a lot of times it is better to go through the thing of having real walls, good walls where you need them, because a lot of times if you can get in a room and shut and lock that door, barricade that door, and they can't come through, you're safe. If the sisters were in that room and they were able to, upon hearing gunshots, barricade that door, lock that door and barricade it, and he was not able to get in and bullets didn't penetrate the walls, they would have been safe. So giving people cover and concealment is another element that should be, again, it depends so much. The other thing I would also stress is that emergency response equipment, not just fire extinguishers, but things like, first aid kits should be available. They should be mounted on the wall with clear, if you're worried about people opening them up and taking the Band-Aids out all the time, they sell boxes with little alarms. So if somebody opens it, it goes, ee. It's enough to deter most people from stealing the Band-Aids. But seriously, having that stuff on hand would be another important thing. I've hardly noticed any masjids that have anything on site that, as far as first aid equipment. AEDs, I haven't seen very many masjids that have AEDs. Those are the defibrillators.
Yeah, the thing where you put it on the guy's chest and you zap him.
Exactly, and those are so easy to use. So all of those things, even just simple things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've covered almost everything.
We've covered a lot.
I think we're at the 2-hour mark. I think it's a good place to stop.
Absolutely. And the thing too is, if people have questions, they're more than welcome to comment to you guys or stuff. You guys know how to get hold.
I was just gonna ask, where can people reach you? Do you have an active social media or? I
do have an active social media account, a Facebook account. They can they can follow me if they want. They can we can share the stuff below. And again, if they want to comment on some of these things, I make a lot of posts public. They're more than welcome to comment on those posts. I know you're going to share some of those posts. I will answer questions back. And again, if I don't know something, I'm going to point you in a direction where I know someone who does, or something that does. And no one is an expert of everything. We're always learning.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I think for the viewers, it's his name is Leon Smith, Leon, and then space Smith. Smith. You can look him up on Facebook.
Yep.
We should take this opportunity. We should take it to learn and take initiative. Hopefully, whether it's learning more, like whether it's getting in shape and learning situational awareness or the combat mindset, or bring the issue to the attention of the community members. Fahad, is there anything else?
Yeah. Also know that all these kind of situations, they really depend on the will of Allah. And that all we're doing is just trying to tie the camel.
Yeah.
Right. So all we're trying to do is just do what we can in this dunya. And at the end of the day, it's all in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal.
Yep.
So for the victims, I want, if any of the people who are affected by the tragedy are listening, I just want to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un.
This was great, guys.
All right, wrap it up, Fahad.
With Surah Al-Asr.
Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العظيم. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, brother Fahad. Thank you, brother Amar.
Thank you, sir.